Ian Machado Garry has weighed in on how he thinks the UFC welterweight division should move forward, and, unsurprisingly, he sees himself firmly at the center of it all. Garry recently climbed to the number 2 spot in the 170-pound rankings after Shavkat Rakhmonov, the only man to hand him a professional loss, was removed from the list. Since that setback in 2024, the future has rebounded impressively, first stepping in on short notice in 2025 to defeat Carlos Prates before following it up with a statement win over Belal Muhammad at UFC Qatar. Those performances have reignited his momentum and pushed him back into serious title contention, with his sights now set on reigning welterweight champion and pound-for-pound standout Islam Makhachev. Garry isn't the only one circling the title picture, though. Former champion Kamaru Usman, unbeaten prospect Michael Morales, and Carlos Prates have all expressed interest in fighting for the belt next. On the champion's side, Makhachev has publicly stated that Usman represents the toughest challenge for him at welterweight, given his experience, physicality, and wrestling pedigree. Still, Garry believes the division can be streamlined with the right matchups, and he's laid out his vision for how things should unfold. In a recent Instagram video, Garry explained that everyone has an opinion on who should fight who at 170 pounds, before offering his own take with clear reasoning behind each pairing. He first suggested a matchup between Carlos Prates and Michael Morales, arguing that they are both dangerous power punchers and that it's a fight fans deserve to see. Garry added that while the bout makes sense on paper, he doubts Morales would accept it, claiming that Prates carries the heavier hands and presents a serious risk. He then turned his attention to a potential clash between Jack Della Maddalena and Kamaru Usman, noting that while he's also intrigued by the idea of Prates fighting Della Maddalena, the Usman matchup would answer far more questions. Garry said he wants to see whether Della Maddalena has truly evolved, specifically if he can handle elite-level takedowns and continue to improve, while also questioning whether Usman still has the tools and intensity needed to turn back another young contender. Finally, Garry made it clear that in his mind, the welterweight title fight is already decided. Declaring himself the rightful next challenger, he confidently stated that he wants to see Islam Makhachev defend his belt against the number 1 contender in the world, which he believes is himself. With that, Garry left little doubt about his ambitions, positioning himself not just as part of the conversation, but as the inevitable next opponent for the champion. Vinicius Oliveira suffered the first loss of his UFC career on Saturday night, tapping to a rear-naked choke against Mario Bautista in the main event of UFC Vegas 113 on February 8th in Las Vegas, and later revealed that he entered the fight with a serious injury. Speaking to AG Fight after the event, Lockdog disclosed that he fractured the ulna bone in his right forearm on December 19th, just 51 days before the bout, yet chose not to withdraw despite the setback. Oliveira admitted that pulling out was an option, but he made the decision to push forward anyway, even though there was little he could do to properly address the injury. He explained that much of his training camp was spent with his arm in a cast, calling the choice reckless in hindsight, but said the injury was kept quiet because he was fully determined to compete no matter the circumstances. According to Oliveira, the injury significantly affected his performance, particularly early in the fight when the pain resurfaced almost immediately. He said that after being taken down in the opening round, he was unable to use his usual frames and defensive movements to work his way back to his feet because that was exactly where the pain was concentrated. Even simple movements caused sharp discomfort, and he told his corner between rounds that the arm was hurting badly. Despite that, he chose to continue fighting through it, though he admitted the pain became overwhelming. Oliveira added that even throwing light jabs or shadowboxing motions caused intense pain, as the movement of punching the air alone aggravated the fracture. Following the loss, Oliveira revealed that the Nevada Athletic Commission handed him a 180-day medical suspension, and he acknowledged that he now needs to seriously consider moving up to featherweight in the future. He explained that he typically walks around at roughly 185 pounds outside of camp and had to cut close to 50 pounds between Monday and Friday of fight week, which proved to be the most difficult weight cut of his career. The injury prevented him from training properly, making it much harder to shed the weight, as he was forced to train at a moderate pace and avoid cardio altogether. Oliveira said that any arm movement caused pain, further complicating an already brutal cut. Prior to the defeat, Oliveira was a perfect 4-0 inside the UFC octagon, with notable wins over Said Nurmagomedov and Ricky Simon, as well as a first-round knockout on Dana White's Contender Series, making this his first loss in nearly 4 years. Dana White has a tough call on his hands after how UFC Vegas 113 played out, especially with the first fight night of 2026, leaving a lot to be desired. The card was capped by a solid performance from Mario Bautista, who closed the show with a submission win over Vinicius Oliveira, but beyond that and a couple of other moments, the night struggled to generate much excitement. For many fans watching from home, it felt like one of those apex events that dragged on, with the low point being a heavyweight bout that somehow went the full 3 rounds without offering much in the way of drama or urgency. That kind of performance only amplified existing frustration around the heavyweight division and certain fighters within it. Jailton Almeida, who entered the night ranked 6th at heavyweight, was coming off a narrow split decision loss to Alexander Volkov in a title eliminator last October and was looking to reassert himself against unranked Rizvan Kuniev. Instead, Almeida dropped a second straight decision, and the reaction online was brutal. Fans quickly turned on him, labeling his style boring and ineffective, with many openly calling for the UFC to release him, despite his ranking and recent proximity to title contention. Social media was flooded with posts demanding he be cut immediately, with little patience shown for his resume or his potential to bounce back. While Almeida would reasonably expect another chance to right the ship in 2026, the optics aren't great when a ranked heavyweight becomes synonymous with dull fights, especially in a division already criticized for its lack of depth. That criticism isn't new either, and Joe Rogan has been one of the loudest voices hammering the point home for years. The longtime UFC commentator has repeatedly described heavyweight as the most shallow division in the company, and he doubled down on that stance recently by suggesting that even a 2-0 Gable Steveson could compete with top 10 heavyweights right now. Rogan even went as far as saying that a brawler like Tank Abbott, fighting in today's era, would still run through a large portion of the lower-tier heavyweight roster simply due to his size, power, and willingness to engage. Taken together, UFC Vegas 113 didn't just deliver a forgettable night of fights, it reignited an uncomfortable conversation for the promotion about roster depth, entertainment value, and whether certain fighters are helping or hurting the product. For Dana White, deciding who stays, who goes, and how to inject life into a struggling division may end up being one of the more important outcomes of an otherwise uneventful event. Alex Pereira's next combat sports appearance might not take place inside the octagon, and that possibility is starting to feel more real by the day. The reigning UFC light heavyweight champion still doesn't have his next MMA fight booked, despite continued pressure from Pereira himself to move up to heavyweight and chase something historic. After knocking out Magomed Ankalaev last October to reclaim the 205-pound title and settle the score from earlier in the year, Poatan has been vocal about wanting either a blockbuster heavyweight clash with Jon Jones or the chance to become a 3-division UFC champion in 2026. While the UFC figures out what to do with him, Pereira isn't content with sitting on the sidelines. Reports suggest he's actively exploring other competitive outlets to stay sharp, and one intriguing option has emerged away from MMA altogether. According to recent interviews, negotiations are ongoing for Pereira to take part in a grappling match against UFC middleweight Shara Magomedov, better known as Bullet. The talks were confirmed by Magomedov's manager, Rizvan Magomedov, who acknowledged that discussions are active and that both sides are waiting on a date, ideally tied to an event in the Middle East or another major international location. Magomedov's camp seems to view the matchup as both a stylistic curiosity and a strategic step forward. His manager noted that Shara is quietly transitioning from being seen purely as a striker into someone more comfortable engaging in wrestling and grappling exchanges. Framing the matchup as two elite strikers colliding in a grappling-only environment, he suggested it would be compelling simply because neither man is traditionally known for that realm, adding to the intrigue. Pereira, for his part, has already shown a willingness to test himself outside his comfort zone, and this would be another example of that mindset. If the match does happen, Pereira would be stepping into territory where another high-level UFC fighter recently fell short. Tsarukyan, who went on a strong grappling run last year, faced Magomedov in his final outing of 2025, but couldn't secure a submission, resulting in a draw. That result came despite Tsarukyan having victories over well-known names like Benson Henderson and Patricky Pitbull in prior matches, underscoring that Magomedov is no easy task even for seasoned grapplers. The situation reflects a broader trend in modern MMA, where top fighters are increasingly staying active outside the UFC while waiting for clarity on their next official bout. Promotions focused on grappling or alternative rule sets have become common destinations, giving athletes a way to compete, earn, and evolve without taking full MMA damage. For Pereira, a grappling match could serve as both a competitive outlet and a way to sharpen skills that might become crucial if and when he makes the jump to heavyweight or takes on another elite challenge back in the UFC.
Evloev has made it clear that he isn't particularly interested in seeing Tsarukyan set his sights on the UFC featherweight title, especially while he believes that belt already belongs to him. Tsarukyan currently sits as the number 2 ranked lightweight contender after Justin Gaethje claimed the interim title last month and jumped into the top spot, leaving the Armenian star in a familiar position of waiting. Recently, Tsarukyan floated the idea of dropping down to 145 pounds to challenge reigning 2-time featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. He explained that if a lightweight title shot isn't next for him, he would be open to chasing gold at featherweight, winning the belt there and then eventually returning to 155 pounds after a few years. It's an ambitious plan, but one that immediately caught the attention of fighters already entrenched in the featherweight title picture. Undefeated contender Evloev addressed Tsarukyan's comments in a calm but confident manner. Speaking to Submission Radio, Evloev said that while he respects Tsarukyan and considers him a friend due to their shared training history, he doesn't want anyone else even talking about the featherweight championship. Evloev suggested that Tsarukyan should stay busy against someone like Jean Silva while he himself focuses on capturing the belt. According to Evloev, the featherweight title is his goal and his alone, and he has no intention of stepping aside or entertaining outside challengers until that mission is complete. Evloev is set to face number 3 ranked Lerone Murphy at UFC London in a high-stakes clash between 2 undefeated contenders. The winner of that bout is widely expected to earn a title shot against Volkanovski later this year, further solidifying Evloev's claim that he's next in line at 145 pounds. Meanwhile, Tsarukyan remains in limbo at lightweight after being passed over for a title opportunity for multiple reasons. For now, Tsarukyan will have to wait and see how the lightweight title picture plays out, particularly the upcoming unification bout between Ilia Topuria and Justin Gaethje. If Topuria emerges victorious, he has already shown little interest in facing Tsarukyan. If Gaethje were to pull off the win and choose not to retire immediately, a title defense against Tsarukyan could make sense. Until then, Tsarukyan's ambitions may be forced to remain on hold, whether at lightweight or featherweight.
Kyoji Horiguchi has his sights firmly set on UFC gold, and after his win at UFC Vegas 113, that motivation doesn't appear to be fading anytime soon. The Japanese standout squared off with Amir Albazi in a crucial flyweight matchup this past Saturday, marking his second fight since returning to the UFC.
Horiguchi made a statement in his comeback last November by stopping Ulanbekov via technical submission, and with this latest result, he has moved to a confident 2-0 in his second UFC run. Against Albazi, the number 6th ranked contender, Horiguchi delivered a composed and technical performance that earned him a unanimous decision victory. Speaking at the UFC Vegas 113 post-fight press conference, the former Rizin champion made it clear that his ultimate objective is to capture the UFC Flyweight Championship, regardless of who is holding the belt. Even if that champion ends up being his close friend and training partner Alexandro Pantoja, Horiguchi says it wouldn't change his mindset. For him, the goal is simple and uncompromising: win the belt no matter who stands across from him. Pantoja, who previously held the flyweight title, lost the championship in unfortunate fashion due to a freak injury. Just seconds into his title defense against Joshua Van at UFC 323, Pantoja landed awkwardly and suffered a dislocated arm, forcing a stoppage that crowned Van as the new champion. While there's no clear timeline for Pantoja's return, Horiguchi has been respectful about the situation and made it clear he doesn't expect to jump ahead of his teammate when he comes back. He emphasized that Pantoja earned his status through multiple defenses and considers him the rightful champion, viewing the loss as nothing more than an accident. Horiguchi's recent run only strengthens his case as a legitimate title contender. He is now 7-0 with one no contest in his last 8 fights, picking up notable wins over fighters like Sergio Pettis, Albazi, and Ulanbekov during this stretch. To find his last defeat, you'd have to go all the way back to April 2022, when he dropped a unanimous decision to Patchy Mix. Mix, who was recently released by the UFC, has since returned to Rizin in Japan, closing that chapter as Horiguchi continues to build momentum toward another shot at championship glory. Dana White still ended up handing out $450,000 in bonuses, despite UFC Vegas 113 being a fairly low-key night at the Meta Apex. The event marked the first Apex card of the new Paramount era and was headlined by Mario Bautista in what was the first and likely only main event of his UFC career. Bautista made the most of the opportunity, securing an impressive submission win over Vinicius Oliveira and earning one of the new $100,000 bonuses as he snapped his skid and returned to form in a big way. Overall, the card struggled to deliver consistent excitement, with just 4 stoppages across 13 fights, making it easily one of the weakest events of the year, following 2 action-packed numbered cards to start the calendar. The UFC now heads into a brief break before returning to action in a couple of weeks, likely hoping for a bounce-back in entertainment value. Those 4 finishes consisted of 2 knockouts and 2 submissions, and the night was also marred by 4 weight misses during the official weigh-ins, including 2 fighters who came in as much as 5 pounds over the limit. None of those athletes managed to score a stoppage, which only added to the muted feel of the event. Still, bonuses were handed out where deserved, with Mikhail Oleksiejczuk and Marc-Andre Barriault earning Fight of the Night honors for their back-and-forth middleweight war, pocketing $100,000 each. Bautista's submission win also earned him a bonus, while Jakub Wicklacz picked up a $100,000 check for his dramatic buzzer-beater submission. Notably, some eye-catching finishes didn't make the bonus cut. Nikolai Veretenikov's brutal standing knockout of Nico Price and Dustin Jacoby's vicious second-round stoppage of Julius Walker both went unrewarded in terms of performance bonuses, though each fighter still walked away with an extra $25,000 simply for scoring a stoppage. Still, on a quieter night at the Apex, there were still moments worth remembering, and Dana White made sure to reward them accordingly. Justin Gaethje has made it clear that intimate relationships are not a priority for him as he enters what could be the final stretch of his fighting career. Fresh off becoming a 2-time interim UFC lightweight champion, Gaethje is fully locked in on the biggest goal still missing from his resume: undisputed UFC gold. After dominating Paddy Pimblett in the main event of UFC 224, he has now secured a high-stakes title unification bout against reigning lightweight champion Ilia Topuria, a fight that could define the closing chapter of his career.
With so much on the line, Gaethje says romance is the last thing occupying his thoughts. Appearing on the Stephen A. Smith Show, The Highlight explained that remaining single is a conscious decision, not a circumstance. He admitted that while he'd be open to a relationship if he found someone he genuinely enjoyed being around on a daily basis, that simply hasn't happened for him yet, and he's at peace with that reality. When asked whether being in a relationship had ever affected his performances inside the octagon, Gaethje didn't hesitate. He said his experiences were mostly negative, not physically, but mentally. According to him, relationships brought emotional distractions and constant noise that pulled his focus away from fighting, which is something he can't afford at this stage of his career. For Gaethje, clarity, structure, and mental calm are essential, and he feels those are easier to maintain on his own. At 37 years old and 32 professional fights deep, Gaethje remains one of the most dangerous fighters in the lightweight division, an impressive feat considering how stacked the weight class is. Over the years, he has built a resume filled with elite names, holding wins over fighters like Paddy Pimblett, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson, Donald Cerrone, and Edson Barbosa. His longevity at the top level speaks to both his skill and his ability to adapt. Despite his accomplishments, most of the MMA world expects Gaethje to enter his showdown with Topuria as the underdog, especially given the widespread belief that El Matador is the best pure boxer in the sport today. Still, counting Gaethje out has never been a safe bet. His toughness, experience, and fight-altering power mean that if Topuria struggles to establish his rhythm, the door could be wide open for a dramatic and memorable upset.
Jon Jones may be starting to slow down talk of a full-fledged UFC comeback, raising fresh doubts about whether fans will ever see him compete again. Widely regarded as a lock for the UFC Hall of Fame, Jones has already experienced a complicated relationship with retirement, having announced his exit from the sport, before later floating the idea of a return. At one point, he even entertained the possibility of a wrestling match with longtime rival Daniel Cormier, only for those discussions to cool after he was diagnosed with arthritis in his left hip, a development that added another layer of uncertainty to his future. Although Jones has publicly shown interest in a potential showdown with Alex Pereira on the highly anticipated UFC White House card, many observers believe that Bones may ultimately choose to remain retired. In a recent interview with Helen Yee, the former UFC heavyweight and light heavyweight champion admitted that walking away for good is a very real possibility at this stage of his life and career. Jones explained that while he still feels young enough and physically capable enough to compete with elite fighters, his personal standard has always been competing at the very highest level, not just surviving in the division. For him, the idea of continuing without being able to perform at his peak may outweigh the appeal of one more payday or high-profile matchup, making the timing of his exit especially important. Jones also reflected on the long-term consequences of fighting, sharing a sobering story about a former fighter he once met who was suffering from serious memory issues as a result of years of competition. The experience clearly left an impression on him, reinforcing his desire to avoid staying in the sport too long and paying an irreversible price for it later in life. He stressed that while he is nowhere near that point himself, the mere possibility of ending up there is enough to give him pause and force him to think carefully about how his career should ultimately conclude. If Jones truly has stepped into retirement for the final time, his legacy is already firmly cemented as one of the greatest mixed martial artists the sport has ever seen. Though debates will always exist regarding his past anti-doping violations and controversies outside the cage, few have ever questioned his talent, fight IQ, or dominance during his prime. Whether he returns for one last moment on a historic stage or chooses to walk away quietly, Jon Jones's impact on MMA is undeniable and will continue to be discussed for generations.
Jade Man-Wong put on a show of dominance and precision in her rematch against Crystal Pittman at BKFC Knucklemania 6 on Saturday night, leaving fans in Philadelphia in awe of her skill and resilience. The fight, which was the evening's only women's bout, saw Man-Wong systematically dismantle Pittman over the full 5 rounds, earning a unanimous decision with all 3 judges scoring the contest 50-45 in her favor. This victory improved Man-Wong's BKFC record to 4-2, while also marking her 3rd win in her last 4 fights in the promotion, underscoring her consistent growth and rising status in the women's division. The matchup carried extra intrigue as it was a rematch of their first encounter at BKFC Montana in October 2021. In that debut clash, Man-Wong had already showcased her potential by stopping Pittman in the 2nd round due to a doctor's stoppage. Both fighters were making their bare-knuckle debuts at the time, and Man-Wong's impressive performance immediately signaled her as someone to watch. Fast forward to Saturday night, and the story remained much the same, except now she looked even more polished, confident, and strategically adept. Throughout the 5 rounds, Man-Wong demonstrated a combination of speed, precision, and tactical awareness that left Pittman struggling to respond. Every exchange saw her land crisp punches while maintaining defensive discipline, controlling the pace and positioning of the fight. Her movement around the ring made it difficult for Pittman to set her feet or generate any meaningful offense, forcing her to rely on desperation strikes that rarely found the target. The way Man-Wong capitalized on openings, mixing head and body shots, and punished every misstep Pittman made, showcased a fighter who had clearly evolved since their first bout. Beyond the technical brilliance, Man-Wong's mental game was on full display. She maintained composure under pressure, avoided unnecessary risks, and clearly had a well-thought-out game plan to neutralize Pittman's strengths. While Pittman tried to press forward at various points in the fight, Man-Wong countered effectively, landing sharp combinations that turned the tide repeatedly. Her clinch work and ability to control the center of the ring further highlighted her dominance, making it clear why she has become one of BKFC's most formidable female competitors. This win not only cements Man-Wong's status in the division, but also positions her for potentially bigger and more high-profile matchups in the future. With the experience gained from both bouts against Pittman, she now has the confidence, skill, and momentum to challenge for the top spots and possibly a title run. Fans and analysts alike will be closely watching her next moves, as she has shown she can consistently handle adversity and elevate her performance when it matters most. Highlights from the fight showcased her full arsenal, crisp striking, strategic footwork, and an unyielding competitive spirit, confirming that Jade Man-Wong is truly a force to be reckoned with in the BKFC women's division and a fighter whose trajectory only continues to rise.
Alexandra Topuria vs. Bryce Mitchell has officially been signed and will go down at UFC 327 in Miami, Florida, giving fans a compelling stylistic matchup between 2 dangerous featherweights on a major stage. The bout adds even more intrigue to the Miami card, with both fighters looking to make a strong statement and climb the division. Meanwhile, Kayla Harrison vs. Amanda Nunes is being targeted to be rebooked for the UFC White House event on June 14th, a matchup that has been heavily anticipated and could represent one of the biggest women's fights in UFC history if everything falls into place.
UFC featherweight contender Diego Lopes has spoken out following his loss to Alexander Volkanovski in the main event of UFC 325, offering a calm and reflective response to the setback. Lopes fell short in his second attempt to capture the featherweight title, once again running into a dominant performance from Volkanovski, who reminded everyone why he's considered one of the greatest fighters the division has ever seen. The defeat naturally sparked questions about whether Lopes can truly become a long-term championship threat at 145 pounds. While he has shown that he can beat most of the division's elite and consistently hang with the top contenders, Volkanovski remains a hurdle he hasn't been able to clear. Still, there's no disgrace in losing to a champion of that caliber, especially one who continues to operate at such a high level. In a statement shared on Instagram, Lopes emphasized acceptance, perspective, and perseverance. He acknowledged that some things in life simply have to be accepted before moving forward, stressing that the journey to this point took a great deal of effort and sacrifice. According to Lopes, that work isn't finished, and neither he nor his team have any intention of slowing down. He spoke about coming back stronger, brushing off the disappointment, and continuing the grind that got him to a title fight in the first place. Lopes also reflected on the realities of competition at the highest level, noting that every fight presents unique challenges, especially when you're standing across from one of the greatest fighters of all time. While he admitted there's always a feeling that more could have been done, he pointed out that fights are never one-sided efforts. There's always another elite athlete on the other side, executing their own game plan just as well. He detailed the breadth of what he and his team tried during the fight, from movement and striking to takedowns, submission attempts, defensive work, and cutting angles. Even with all of that, Lopes acknowledged that sometimes doing a lot still isn't enough to secure the win. He closed on a positive note, saying that his health, his family, and his team are all in good shape, and with that perspective, he believes everything will be okay as he looks ahead to what comes next.